watching us live on Diamond TV and other media houses, as well as other platforms, social media platforms that are broadcasting this press briefing live this morning. Good morning to our viewers. Good morning to our listeners. My name is Rafa Nakachinda. I'm Chairman for Information and Publicity for the Patriotic Front. This morning, I am coming to address you, of course, in the company of Mr. Patrick Banda, who is the Lusangazi Council Chairperson. This morning, we are going to address ourselves to two issues. And I want to appeal to the Zambian people that whilst I hold the portfolio of Chairman for Information and Publicity of the Patriotic Front, I am also coming to you as a citizen of the Republic of Zambia. The issues that I'm going to address today, I want to appeal to our listeners. I want to appeal to our viewers to hear us today and to hear me today as a Zambian, without prejudice or indeed a partisan lens in analyzing what we're going to speak to this morning. I'm compelled this morning on behalf of many well-meaning patriotic Zambians who wish that this country continues to develop, grow, and strengthen institutions of government. In the recent past, there has been a raging debate around the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And unfortunately, Zambia is populated with a lot of people that say things out of ignorance. We also have a second set of people that say things out of personal interest. They say things because they feel that by saying those things, they may benefit in one or the other. And to that effect, even on very serious matters, they choose to patronize. And there are very few, if not rare, patriotic Zambians that have the courage to rise above partisan interests, to rise above personal interests in addressing national matters that by all means should never be discussed through political lenses. Among them, obviously, is a sacred institution called the judiciary, to which the office of DPP is part in ensuring that the judicial system of the Republic of Zambia maintains a high level of integrity in dispensing justice. A few days ago, there was a leaked letter from what we have come to learn today from State House of a confidential letter written by the Director of Public Prosecution inquiring from the Director of Drug Enforcement Commission on why she chose to abrogate the Constitution and decide to arrest an accused person in the name of Mr. Milingo, rearrest him on charges that were discontinued by way of a nolle. And people have decided to twist that particular letter. But before I address myself to the substance of what we're going to deal with this morning, I think Zambia is moving on a dangerous path of wanting to politicize everybody and everything. The lady and woman that is in the office of DPP today, first of all, she's the first woman to occupy that office from 1965. An outfit that every Zambian and every woman in this country is supposed to celebrate and be proud of. This is a lady that people want to treat as though she came into this office of DPP as an opportunist, favored by Patriotic Front. When in fact, straight from school, from the University of Zambia, her first assignment was, or job was to join the office of DPP as a prosecutor. And she has risen through the ranks and has served the people of Zambia diligently for close to 30 years in that institution. And people have the audacity to try and suggest that Patriotic Front went and got maybe somebody that was like a cadre and therefore appointed them as the DPP. I think the Zambian people need to be reminded. Some of us came to know about State Council Lilian Siune, Shawa Siune, during the time of the harassment, intimidation, blackmail of Mkerebai. When there was an attempt between 2002 and 2007-08 to undermine the office of DPP. Mkerebai, as a professional prosecutor himself, took decisions standing on the provisions of the law, which is the Constitution. And some of the elements that had unique agendas at the time began a propaganda program to demonize Mkerebai. Something that if people went in the archives would be able to understand that unfortunately, because of his principled stance, he refused to be intimidated. He refused to be coward. He refused the office of DPP to be compromised. Some of us believe that is what led to his unfortunate death. A death whose circumstances up to today have not been explained. One of the heroines that stood out during that time in defense of the office of DPP is the now current DPP, Madam Lilian Siune. She stood with the DPP at the time in defense of the Constitution. And she was credited for being, as it were, young as she was at the time, a very stubborn, young lawyer or young prosecutor that could even stand up to the head of state at the time to make sure that the Constitution of the Republic is respected. Those, unfortunately, who were part of the cartel that created later what was known as the tax force, which all of us as Zambians know that it was just a platform for people to enrich themselves, found her to be an undesirable element. And when one of them manipulated their way to become DPP, she became a target to frustrate and ended up hounding her out. Her coming back to that particular office was not out of favor. It was out of recognition that at the expense of the taxpayer, this lady had been capacitated in terms of training and further enriching her understanding of a role of a prosecutor. She's one of the highly qualified prosecutors that this country has remained with. Of course, there are still others that are being developed under that same department or that same, institution. That notwithstanding, there has been propaganda deliberately orchestrated to try and demonize that office, to try and demonize the person holding that particular office. And I think as Zambians, we need to call each other to order and look at matters in a more objective manner, not politicize everything. I know that there are people, because I belong to Patriotic Front, who want to reduce this argument to a petty argument of the fact that it's PF trying to defend her. But I am speaking as a Zambian, that what is happening right now to the office of the DPP is going to haunt all of us in the future. That office has always been a subject of discussion. During the Mkreva time, Mkreva was accused of aiding the argument of the opposition. He was also accused of actually aiding the interests of those who were in power before the new regime, that time led by President Levi Patrick Manawas. It has been the same. Even at the time there was the now judge in the Court of Appeal, Mr. Charo Mchenga. Even him was accused of either being pro-government or pro-opposition, depending on the decisions that come from that office. Even during time of Ntembonchito, people argued that some of the decisions were either pro-government or pro-opposition. Because at the end of the day, that particular decision in office is responsible for prosecution. And certain decisions are made in the execution of duties. And depending on whether it favors you or doesn't favor you, regardless of what the law says, there's always an argument of saying there must have been, somebody favored, or this is a biased decision because maybe it is serving that particular interest. Today, there is a debate, Zambians. There is a debate, ladies and gentlemen, arising from a non-prosecutor that was entered in the case of Mr. Miringolungu. Unfortunately, people have not been debating the merits of those cases. The only thing that has happened is that people have been abusing not only the office, but abusing the lady there, accusing her of either favoring a Mr. Miringo because he's a boyfriend, favoring a Mr. Miringo because either he's an uncle, and because it's a woman occupying that office, she seems to actually have boyfriends littered across the country, depending on who seems to have had a matter before her. Regardless, without any regard to the fact that this is not only a woman, but this is also a married woman with children. Yesterday, even her late parents were brought into the picture, used to whip her and whip propaganda. Zambians, how far can we go in abusing one another? Let's come to the merits of the matter. I was surprised yesterday to read about a statement from Laz attributed to the last president. State Counsel Abid Shonga is one of the people that I highly respect. But I can say that today I expected more from him. Why? Because he's a former Attorney General and he needs to know better. The statement to rule the DPP's office offside is not only reckless, but irresponsible on the part of a person who knows better. If the last president was just a mere lawyer, possibly would not even make a comment, but he was expected to know better. He was occupying the office of Attorney General. And I must disclose today that we miss the last of the time of George Kunda. We miss the last of the time of the likes of Mr. Mdenda and the other last presidents that spoke on behalf of the Zambian people and made sure that not only the judiciary, but also the executive is kept in check to make sure that the rule of law prevails. The letter that was referred to, as we understand it ourselves, of course, Mr. Milingo was arrested and charged. And due to factors that I'll refer to this morning, it seems that the office of the DPP entered the knowledge. I mean, not it seems, of course, it's a fact, entered the knowledge. And unfortunately, because of the public outcry and having a government that plays to the gallery every other day, we had the director of DEC instructed to rearrest Milingo to try and manage the public outcry against the constitutional provision of the Republic of Zambia that provides, colleagues, in Article 180 of the Act number 2 of 2016, which sets out the powers of the office of DPP. Article 180C provides as follows. C. Discontinue at any stage before judgment is delivered, meaning discontinue a case. Criminal proceedings instituted or undertaken by the Director of Public Prosecutions or any other person or authority. Further, the National, as it were, Prosecution Authority Act, in particular Section 8F, deals with a similar issue and it provides as follows. F. The powers of the DPP are to review a decision to prosecute or not to prosecute any criminal offenses. I must say, the import of these provisions is that the DPP, in any matter, as such as one that we are going to discuss in detail, had shown that the DPP has power to direct the way this matter was to proceed, given the nature of offense and the fact that the DPP, for example, discontinued this matter. Now, colleagues, from a layman's point of view, if the DPP has these powers to discontinue a matter, and in this case, the matter to do with Mr. Milingo was discontinued by way of another prosecutor, what powers has Madam Chirwa got or has to go against the decision of the DPP? Because people are saying, no, the DPP is actually dictating who the DEC should arrest and not arrest. When I read that leaked letter, I was very disappointed, and that's how come I was prompted to speak to these matters. The letter only speaks to specifically the matters that were discontinued by way of a nolle prosequi. So if Mr. Shonga, for example, his argument is that the DEC has the powers to go against the decision of the DPP, meaning that when the DPP enters a nolle, the law enforcement agencies have the power to rearrest. What kind of judicial system are we going to have? So the DPP will go to court and make a decision, and then the law enforcement agencies make another decision? Why do we go to court, and when we reach there they tell us we cannot proceed on this matter, we are still waiting for instructions from the office of the DPP? Does that speak to the very provisions of the Constitution? I have tried to read in the Constitution to establish what powers the DEC has what powers the police have, what powers the SEC have, that overrides the constitutional provisions that give the office of the DPP the powers that she has. Now, Zambians, the letter that is being debated was leaked. Even to discuss that letter in itself is an illegality, because leaking a government document is an offense. So we want to find out who leaked that document. Is the information we hear that that document was leaked from State House true? If it is true, what agenda is State House advancing? What scheme is going on? Further, we have information that actually the executive led by the top office of the land, presidency, had a meeting with this Mr. Milingo to negotiate a deal that they called in the interest of the state, to which we are made to understand even certain immunities were given to Mr. Milingo. And in that meeting, Zambians, the head of state was part of that meeting. The Minister of Finance was part of that meeting. We are made to understand that some officers in State House were part of that meeting, to which Mr. Milingo was being persuaded in the interest of the state to be able to give in, resign, so that the state can be able to solve, quote unquote, economic issues. I want to appeal to my elder brother, the Republican president, His Excellency President Hakainde Hichilema, to search his conscience. I want Dr. Msokotwane, who I know very well, he used to be with me in MMD and now Minister of Finance, to search his conscience. I want to also challenge Mr. Milingo and his lawyers, State Counsel Sakuba Skota and others, to search their conscience and tell the Zambian people whether or not there was a negotiation, a deal cut, to which Milingo was accorded some immunities. In the similar fashion that we had before, when now Chief Justice Mumba Malila was Attorney General and Mr. Nchito was DPP, they accorded immunity on one Mr. Rajan Matani. And therefore, matters that were to proceed in court could not proceed. So why are we playing double standard? Today, an office is being used maliciously to be abused by the public, by citizens who don't know, when in fact the deal was cut somewhere else. Even if the DPP was not part of the discussion, if it came to our attention that such discussions were taking place, the case was already compromised. How could the matter have proceeded? Now, because in Zambia, there are no people who are ready to man up and stand with the truth, everybody's checking out, giving excuses. We have privileged information. I will not disclose for today. I want first of all to see whether we have in leadership people who can stand for the truth and not just politicize everything and politic on everything. There are consent agreements that have been entered in the name of the state versus Mr. Milingo. And we want to know the content of this. Is it true? Now, people are trying to say, no, entering a Nole is such an out of this world situation. Have we forgotten, colleagues, that the Republican president we have today is sitting on a Nole himself? When the Nole was entered, I must tell you, I was in government myself. I was part of Patriotic Front already by the privilege of having been nominated as a member of parliament. There were sentiments within ourselves as Patriotic Front accusing this same lady that she's UPND, because the police were not even happy about that Nole prosecution. But she was bold enough to take that step because of the factors that surrounded that case. Nelly Muti, who is now Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, is sitting on Honore today over fraud involving over 35 million, or is it billion kwacha? The figures can be researched and corrected. It's amazing that even when law enforcement agencies were not happy about those non-prosecuted, that time they didn't have the power to rearrest against the DPP's decision. Today, Mary Chirwa has the power to rearrest. Where has she gotten the powers? And being aided by institutions that are supposed to be run by professionals like us. Zambians, let's wake up. There's something going on, which if tomorrow we don't correct today, tomorrow it will haunt this country, and it will be difficult to correct. Honorable Axon Sajan and the group, they are sitting on a knowledge. Strangely, in this regime, a person who is sitting on a knowledge all of a sudden has acquired local standing to go and sue for compensation. A knowledge is just but a discharge, which has provisions that you can be rearrested under the instruction of the Director of Public Prosecution. The real question in this letter to the DEC officer is whether she had received instruction from the DPP for rearrest. Because whatever circumstances that could have led to that knowledge, they needed to be satisfied for a rearrest, obviously, to be entered into. So what is going on? People are not even discussing. There was a knowledge prosecutor entered recently, which the UPND are celebrating, of 8 UPND cadres who killed Mr. Kungo in Northwestern. That issue has not been discussed. Is this a partisan argument? I want to challenge Mr. Abid Shonga. Haven't you seen this case? Does it sit well with you that we will have a political organization tamper with witnesses, hide key witnesses, to an extent that even the office of the DPP could not prosecute properly? We end up people being charged with manslaughter, when indeed, factually, in broad daylight, in the presence of the media, Congo was killed brutally, and we all know what happened. But today people have been charged with manslaughter. And that is not a subject for discussion. The fellow that has gone to report the office of the DPP to JCC, Fube, Pirato, as they call him, he was even on a TV station yesterday. He himself is sitting on a knowledge. And the people are not even discussing that. What is it? Is it because she's a woman? Is it because she's from Eastern Province that she could be harassed in that manner? So is everybody that was appointed in the Patriotic Front regime a cadre? What does it say now to the appointments that are being made by Misaka and Deichilema? Are they all UPND cadres? Media, I want you to go and ask Mr. Miringo. Go and ask State Council Sakuba Scott and the lawyers that are representing Mr. Miringo. Ask them to use their good conscience. Is there anything that the public eye has not seen? Go and ask the State House. Is there anything that the public is not seeing? Why do you all dealers wanting to sacrifice an office which is an institution responsible for making sure that the judicial system's integrity is not tampered with, being abused like that? And women of the Republic of Zambia, how can you go to sleep when your fellow woman is being unjustly abused, not only for her professional work? If she has made a mistake professionally, that you can excuse, but she's being abused even at personal level. Everybody's a boyfriend. So even for this press briefing that I've had today, to speak principally in defense of that office, because it's a woman occupying it, tomorrow Nakatinda will be a boyfriend. Miringo is a boyfriend. We can possibly even say, since Mr. Akainde is also a beneficiary of another prosecutor, possibly is also a boyfriend. Even Pilato, since he's a beneficiary of Enole, is also a boyfriend. Is that the way we are going to develop as a country where women are abused willy-nilly? And people are not talking to those issues. State Council abuse Shonga. Today you have the guts to open your mouth to speak. Where were you when that office was under attack? Where have you been when that office has suffered propaganda? Where have you been when your fellow state council is under abuse from everywhere? You have not stood to defend that office. Today you issue a partisan statement purely to try and appease people. We want to register to you that we are very disappointed with you. Very disappointed. The other issue I want to address, fellow Zambians, is to do with this gentleman seated here, to just review to you that we could be dealing with a regime that is engaged in criminal activities. Yesterday I was very reluctant to bring this matter to the public. But by evening I was compelled that out of what I'm going to discuss today, I also discuss this matter. This is Mr. Patrick Banda, the Patriotic Front-sponsored council chairperson for Lusangazi. You all know what we went through for this gentleman to end up being elected by the people of Lusangazi as their council chairperson. He has attempted 3 times to stand to represent the people of Lusangazi as an independent. When there was a by-election, when in 2021, the first round of the election before another candidate died, and now, this time that has been elected. The first thing that happened was an attempt to abduct him when the UPND heard that he is a possible candidate on our ticket as Patriotic Front. I personally had to hide him until the day of filing in nomination. When they realized that they couldn't stop him filing in the nomination, they came up with this fantastic lie that this gentleman does not have a grade 12 certificate. Because during the election, the first round of the election of 2021, he was attacked and they stole, because of course he was becoming a threat to some of the candidates, they stole properties from him, he will explain. Among them was his grade 12 certificate. He quickly went to the police, reported, got a police report, went to ECZ, paid the fees required to have his grade 12 certificate reprinted. Because it takes a bit of time, the only thing that ECZ gave him was to authenticate that truly he has a grade 12, a full grade 12 certificate. And they had a copy of that original certificate. And with that certification, he filed in nominations. A candidate for UPND who was not even part of the nomination writes a letter to ECZ, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, saying he doesn't have a grade 12 certificate. ECZ advised him, if you have evidence, can you petition to nullify his nomination? They didn't do that because they didn't have evidence. But they went and abused the police to have him arrested, and they pushed the case to the magistrate's court that doesn't have a grade 12 certificate. Or in the attempt to defranchise him, he ended up winning the elections. They have been harassing him through that court case. We can't comment further because obviously we may be cited for contempt. But in the process, the grade 12 certificate that he had applied ECZ to reprint was reprinted and given to him. But 2 days ago, colleagues, my brother, Levin Goma, the political advisor to the president, the provincial minister of Eastern Province, the permanent secretary, the DC, and the deputy permanent secretary went to try and coerce him to withdraw the petition in the Constitutional Court so that he then can be offered money and then possibly later after the election offered the position of DC in Katete. We began to monitor his activities because we wanted to see how far these people can go. Yesterday, early in the morning, they abducted him or picked him from his arm. By mid-morning, they were here, promising him that they are going to arrange a meeting with the head of state, to which he was going to be given 150,000 kwacha. And then later on, he should write to the lawyers that a party has appointed to represent him and are paying. He should write them a letter saying that you should not represent me, I want to represent myself. So that later he can then go personal and withdraw the case. They even compromised the lawyer who was representing him first, Mr. Piri from Chipata, who attempted to undermine his petition in the Constitutional Court by submitting a petition to a wrong place, which is a tribunal, which is an ad hoc court dealing with local government petitions, instead of straight in the Constitutional Court. But as God would have it, and as the binoculars would have it, we were zooming from Petauke and zooming until they reached Lusaka. And we waited until yesterday at noon. Mr. Levi Ngoma, Mr. Patrick Mchereka, Mr. Aimbe, Honorable Aimbe, got him and took him for lunch, telling him, no, now you have come, let's execute this plan. I called this gentleman yesterday. He's here and I'm presenting to Zambian people because we need to challenge these occurrences. I asked him, where are you? He says, I'm in Lusangas. I said, but as I zoom today, you are seated with Levi Ngoma. You are seated with Patrick Mchereka. You are seated with Honorable Aimbe. He's here. Ndiye meeting ya Pashika. Levi was even saying, Papa, this binocracy is going to haunt us. They even wanted to accuse certain wings of government. But when you are doing wrong things, there will always be people that will never be pleased. Don't even go about in accusing systems of government and so on. It's your own reckless criminal activities that are getting you exposed. I said I was reluctant. I called Honorable Mchereka yesterday, just as gentlemen, to challenge his conscience. And I said, my brother, I'm not calling you out of malice. This, can you stop it? And we even asked him that go back to Lusangas. I had to call him back because we learned later that the State House gave an instruction to ECZ to confiscate his grade 12 certificate, because according to them, if he still has that certificate, he is going to stand on PF ticket and win again. So grab that certificate, find a reason, and tell him we'll give it to you after the election. A poor woman, an officer at ECZ, whose husband is a PS, maybe they threatened to fire the PS, threatened as well, was panting in the night looking for him. Unfortunately, because of being human and a senior member of society being council chairperson from Usangazi, he obliged and said, let me hear her out. She comes and starts pleading with him. Meeting that same meeting where a minister of justice, imagine colleagues, the one who's supposed to be the head, de facto head of the judiciary, is sitting in a meeting to act, to conduct a criminal activity of bribery, to sabotage an election and the judicial process in the Constitutional Court. And then today, all of us are clapping for them. There is a saying, in reference now to the office of DPP, there is a saying that if you want to kill a dog, just give it a bad name. If you go in a village and just say, this dog has rabies, people just pick stones and start throwing. They won't even ask a question. That is what is happening now in this country. propaganda and all kinds of machinations and shenanigans are taking center stage other than the real argument. Today, I came to challenge those who are in government. I challenge Levi Ngoma. Let him say, he was in a scandal for DP. Now he's in a scandal for Lusangazi. Can he confirm? I challenged him, Muchereka, yesterday, that he was trying to tell me that he's not aware. I said, do you want me to prove that you are aware? And today, I want to still appeal to their conscience. Do you want us to prove that that scandal happened? Please, Zambians, let's dig deeper. There is an agenda which is not a nice agenda, and we should not permit it. Mr. Ban, Kambani,
thank you so much. I'm sure you have already heard my names. I'm Patrick Banda, the council chairperson, Lusangazi. Yesterday, to my surprise, as any ordinary Zambian citizen, when you lost the original grade 12 certificate, you go to Examination Council of Zambia and apply for another certificate, of which I did that. So I was given my original certificate, but late in the evening, I was called by the examination council boss, calling me that, where are you, Mr. Banda? So I said, no, I'm here, I'm in town. So she pleaded, said, no, I would like to meet you. To my surprise, she told me she has received instructions that she should confiscate my original certificate after giving me. So now, I'm wondering, say, does it mean that for me to contest in Lusangazi, did I commit any offense? Is it a crime for me to contest or to stand? My appeal is that to those who are in government, they must have pity for the people of Lusangazi. They are really suffering as I'm speaking. This is why I was elected. I was not appointed, no. So, that is what happened. So now, I'm surprised that why should the examination council, what interest does they have? Does it mean that because maybe they are married, they are being married to the PS, or what? What interest? What agenda? So my appeal is, I need my certificate, because that is my document. I'm not a foreigner, I'm a Zambian. And I feel no one should sit on my rights, because I've got my rights as well. So my appeal is that I need my certificate, and it is within my rights. If I want to contest, no one should actually disadvantage me from that privilege. So that is what transpired. All what you have said is true. All of you, I'm sure the issue of Lusangazi, it has been there, since the nominations up to campaign, up to winning. They have been pushing me this angle and this angle. I don't really understand. Does it mean that we want to kill opposition parties? Does it mean that we don't want to have other people who can be against maybe our ideas? So I'm surprised. That is what I can say. Thank you.
Right. Colleagues, thank you very much for giving us your attention. Any questions, I'll be able to answer. I always know that I'm usually clear in my submissions. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Augustine.
I know you've been very controversial when it comes to matters of national interest. and this might also bring some attention from government. I just wanted to find out from you. You're saying that you have information on a consent agreement which was entered into guaranteeing Mr. Milingo immunity to prosecution and a case in which was labeled state interest. I think that's what you said. Would you be able to kind of share more light on that, and do you have evidence to that effect if you are requested to submit and share with the public?
Well, I've raised an issue, and there are parties to that effect. And among the parties is Mr. Milingo himself. So either of the parties, the reason you are called the fourth estate is because you have a duty to inform the public. I've given you a lead and an indication where you can go and get information. I've challenged Mr. Milingo, his lawyers, I've challenged State House, and I've challenged let me further challenge the Attorney General and challenge the Solicitor General to dispute that there was no deal before all this arabaru and drama that has taken place. So, Mr. Augustine, you have a duty to this country. Proceed to Mr. Milingo, find him, proceed to his lawyers, Central Chambers, proceed to other lawyers, proceed to the Attorney General's office, proceed to State House, and find out. They'll give you, if they have a conscience, they'll give you the truth. Any other question? Ladies and gentlemen,